Ayo, wishing y'all well, and yo, literally Deltarune tomorrow, or, oh my, I don't even know when I'm gonna get this up. I don't know if I'm gonna get this up. This is so daunting. I have been wanting to share hopes and predictions for Chapter 3 and 4 of Deltarune, and a lot of life got in the way, but I don't regret it. I just regret that this is literally so last minute, but I don't want to miss this chance, because tomorrow everything's gonna be different. If y'all don't mind a more minimally edited, more podcast-style sharing of these ideas, I'd love to, for fun, hype, and potential bragging rights. I'd love to share my unspoiled playthrough of the new chapters tomorrow, but before then, I guess a cool part of this being so last minute is that I had a new idea as I was making this. I have a change to a shot I want to call. So these are my most recent final thoughts right before playing the game. I guess as good a place to start as any is, what does Ralsei, since I've already discussed that. If you want evidence on why I feel how I do, I've got a whole video on it, but yeah, I do legit think that Ralsei is the vessel from the start of the game. Some people, like CammyBoyG, shout out that Ralsei absentee father video was great, or in my comments, like the idea of Ralsei being a goner, but not the vessel from the start, which makes sense and sounds good to me. Personally, I'm sticking with Ralsei being the vessel. What's really doing it for me is the heart on his robe. That I really like interpreting that as a heart-shaped hole where a soul should be. He blushes when we get too close to the soul, and I really love the timing. He seems like he was just made. I really like if we literally see and start the game with him being made, and the fact that he knows our names. That all gives me the impression that he's just too connected to us specifically, so he could just be a goner, he could be a goner that considers the vessel from the start a close sibling somehow, or something, but that's my shot. I'm calling it. I'm open to being wrong, but if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I think Ralsei is the vessel from the start of the game. I've really liked ideas of the knight rather than being someone making fountains from the surface, from above, being someone trapped in the darkness below, underground, like Des or Gaster, just trying to escape. But I think the video Queen has of the knight making the fountain in the computer lab deconfirms them. Up until a couple of hours ago, I for months, for years I guess, had been telling friends, telling myself, calling the shot that the knight is Alvin. Father Alvin. I think I'm a Father Alvin knight truther. And people always said he's a red herring, and I just figured who the knight is a red herring mystery. I don't think it matters as much as we think it does, how much it's built up to matter. It's going to be revealed, and it's not going to feel like the scene is finished, and then something bigger, more important is going to be revealed. But thinking about it after everything, thinking about it now, actually giving it some thought, there's always been a couple of things that haven't felt quite right. What I do like about the idea of Alvin being the knight is that Gaster is tricking him. I like that Gaster, this figure associated with 666 and devilry for whatever reason, would go after this holy man who is thematically opposed to him, maybe because he's a threat to him somehow, and is tricking him. And after Chapter 1, we get out of the Dark World, and immediately we get a clock pointing at an impossible 6:30. It's just 666, you know, whatever, all that. And we get a drawing that Alvin made of Gerson. And then after Chapter 2, we get this ding ding ding, pay attention to me. Alvin's up to something, muttering about Gerson's hammer. Is it right for this hammer to ... Like, something's going on with that. Where this still feels technically possible, but falls apart for me, is the means that Alvin would have to make these fountains and get away with them. Like, okay, we see at the end of Chapter 2, Chris makes a fountain, and it takes like a minute for the darkness to fall. So, could someone who makes a fountain get away in time to not be stuck in the Dark World? Because it's kind of scary when you're in a Dark World. The only way out, apparently, is to seal the fountain. I feel a little weird using this as evidence, because maybe the darkness just fell slow for dramatic effect, maybe we just needed to see Chris put the soul back in, but dude, it did fall slow. I'm gonna run with it. I don't even think it's gonna change much, but I do think that Alvin could have made dark fountains and then left the rooms before getting stuck in Dark Worlds. He would have needed some places to hide though while he snuck around and made his escapes, which I do believe he had the means for. In Chapter 1, we have that locked door to the left. Maybe the school got a little sloppy, and as the son of a former teacher, Alvin could have the key to this, and then he waited for Chris and Susie to get in the closet and shut the door on them. For chapter 2, in the computer lab, they do allude that a large person could have hidden in the closet, so I think it's possible that Alvin snuck behind Noelle and Birdley, who maybe didn't notice a fountain being made. We have seen Susie and Toriel sleep through the creation of a fountain, so I guess it's possible. And then somehow Alvin snuck by them and waited upstairs while Susie was downstairs in the library, and then once Chris and Susie were in the dark world, he could make his way out past Undyne and everybody. And ta-da, he did it. Alvin's the knight. This almost works. What really doesn't do it for me is how he could sneak by Noelle and Birdley. I really think the perpetrator had to have been able to put Noelle and Birdley to sleep. Up until now, I was really just thinking that Gaster granted Alvin the power to pacify, even in the light world. Gaster, I believe, helped make Ralsei and grants him power, and Ralsei calls upon heavenly light to heal people. This, and one of the reasons Ralsei is made to look like Asriel, I believed were points to manipulate Alvin. Look, it's that nice boy you know, he's got heavenly light, we're good, join our team. And while I suppose this is all still possible, I think Occam's razor and all, it's more simple if the character we've seen pacifying people is the one pacifying Noelle and Birdley. I do believe Noelle and Birdley were in the computer lab for some time before it became a dark world. They set up their books, and then the knight showed up, pacified them, and I do believe that knight to be Ralsei. Early on, right after Chapter 2 came out, when the discussion of the knight's identity would come into question, Ralsei would often be dismissed, because he's a darkener, we just saw him at the school, plenty of reasons, but I don't believe that, and I believe I've convinced some of y'all that he's not a darkener, and I think he can teleport. Teleporting is so strong. It feels cheap, because of course he could sneak, he can teleport. But it's Noelle and Birdley being asleep. I think that's the nail in the coffin. That's the one thing giving the edge to Ralsei over Alvin for me. He's got the means. Bye Chris, bye Susie, teleports over to the library closet, I guess puts Noelle and Birdley to sleep, and then teleports upstairs to hide there while Chris and Susie go in. Then he appears behind them like he came from the same entrance. He's got the motive, I think. Works for Gaster, mostly. There's some weird moments where he's talking to Chris privately, it looks like, but he follows this prophecy like a script. The prophecy calls for a cyber world, it calls for Susie and Noelle to chat, and I guess the best way to make a prophecy happen is to make it happen. I don't mean to keep pointing at this kid, I don't want every reveal to center around him, but in this case, I do think the knight is Ralsei. My buddy Mauve pointed out that the king should have met the knight, but that Ralsei has been in disguise, so that doesn't ruin the idea. Alvin is still involved. He's at least considering doing something with this hammer, and I would like that to be that Ralsei has tricked him, said, hey, I'm Asriel, I need you to use that hammer to make a fountain in Chapter 4. And Alvin unknowingly helps because he trusts Asriel. To what end? I don't know. What are Gaster and Ralsei doing? Making dark worlds, closing dark fountains. I guess they are recruiting darkners, whatever that does. I think Ralsei may have an ulterior motive of like, well, gee whiz, Chris doesn't want that soul in them, and I sure would like it. But if it's out of Chris, then they might die, because they move all stiff without it. Well, I can brainstorm while playing the game. That's not what this is for, so... Okay, moving on. I guess something else to explore is what's going on in the beginning, at the end of the Goner Maker sequence, the vessel creation scene. Is someone interrupting? Is it not an interruption? I don't know the original intent of this sequence, but it looks like we're making a Goner version of Chris, and in reaction to mentioning Chris, Susie, or Noelle, I'm paraphrasing, but Gaster says something like, what a fun coincidence, you're gonna meet someone wonderful. So we are meant to meet all of them. It's weird and interesting that Gaster is helping us create a Goner version of Chris that I guess is meant to meet Chris. I kinda hit a wall there, I need more clues. There's no solid evidence to think and feel the way I do, and yet I do feel strongly about a shot I want to call. It's coming from a place of keeping in mind that Des has gone missing for a long time, like a while ago. I'm also keeping in mind that there's some reputation that Chris is afraid of the bunker. There's also the piece that something happened, some event caused Asgore to lose his position as the town's police chief. And Toriel, similar to Undertale, seems to have liked Asgore at one point, and now really just doesn't. In Undertale, Toriel didn't like that Asgore killed human kids and kept everyone trapped underground despite the fact that he could have gone to the surface after one soul, but didn't because of his miserable cowardice. Here in Deltarune, I believe we may be seeing a parallel, where Toriel is interpreting Asgore being a coward, and that resulting in the unnecessary death of another child. I feel like I'm jumping to conclusions or leaping logic, but I feel like Asgore may have been faced with a situation where he believed he could only save Chris or Des, while Toriel believes he totally could have saved Des too. Being there and potentially saved, Chris may have survivor's guilt, feeling guilty about what happened to Des, especially if Chris was being pranky and opened the bunker as a joke or something. Blaming themselves for what happened, that could be why Chris got distant with Noelle, not wanting something similar to happen to her. That could also be why, despite sweet stories of playing outside as kids or prior connections, Chris these days seems to isolate, not going to places they used to go, and not having friends. I think this could even explain Chris's side of the room, where I'm sure Toriel and Asriel are sweet enough to encourage more decorations, while Chris refuses, internally feeling unworthy of any nice decorations. Maybe my reasoning's off, but I think that Chris feels guilty over some bunker-related, Gaster-related incident, guilty about Des going missing, guilty about Asgore losing his job, guilty about Toriel and Asgore's divorce, and somehow has come across another Gaster plan now and seizes the chance to intercept it. Maybe Chris reached Gaster through some demon summoning or some other occult ritual, and maybe Chris felt like Gaster would go after Noelle next. However it happened, it feels like Chris intercepted, not fully understanding, but just knowing they had to protect Noelle, they had to sacrifice themselves, they had to atone for what happened all those years ago. So it may be early, but I'm calling the shot. I don't know if we're gonna get this answered, but I do believe Chris interrupts the beginning Gonermaker sequence. And I do believe that Des going missing, Chris being afraid of the bunker, and Asgore losing his position as police chief are all connected. As for what happened to Des, maybe there's not quite enough to go off of yet, but I think she probably shattered across time and space. There's this cool thing in both Undertale and Deltarune where if you type out Gaster, the game resets. Seems like only the rule-breaking goners and the sound test are allowed to mention Gaster. Buddies like Mauve and I have chatted about how cool it would be if in Deltarune we're like, hey, what's in the bunker? And someone's like, oh, you mean Gaster? And as soon as the name is finished typed out, like, it just resets to your last save. Wouldn't that be so cool? Anytime someone tries to give you a clue, back to your last save, not allowed. Ugh, I really hope that happens. But something similar-ish might be going on with Des. Noelle and Rudy are allowed to say Des, and Susie is allowed to think about Noelle's sister, but even looking at this calendar, Chris can only say the last month. I guess you're allowed to name your vessel and creator December, and Birdly breaks this seemingly cosmic rule and at one point said December. So that's why Birdly's the only one who can stop Gaster. There's not a lot to go off of here, but we know from like bonus Undertale content that Des exists in Undertale. Des and Noelle, while never being part of the main story, are mentioned a couple of times. And in Undertale, rarely, you can learn that Gaster shattered across time and space. And now in Deltarune, we see that Gaster is busy talking to Jevil, talking to Spampton, talking to us at the start of the game. He's doing stuff, but now Des is missing. I guess I just think it would be cool if in these parallel worlds, the same cosmic, important, strange event basically happened the same way but had different results. Maybe in Undertale, Gaster's able to sacrifice himself for Des, and in Deltarune, he's not? I don't know if Gaster would sacrifice himself for anyone. I get the impression that he's analytically neutral, but I also get the impression that that's only the case now after he's transcended his original plane of existence. Before, he totally could have been like a nice dude, Sansa's brother, maybe. Maybe I'm brainstorming too much again, but I think the game might reach an interesting point where we're like, alright, Des is shattered across time and space, what do we do about that? And then Sans is like, yeah, I've been trying to figure that out forever. Maybe that feels too fanfiction-y. Well, I don't feel confident because it doesn't feel like there's a lot to go off of, but I'll call the shot. I think Des is shattered across time and space, and we're gonna have to figure out what to do about that, and it could recontextualize Undertale. And I don't have much else. Papyrus? Yeah, I guess, here's my shot to call. I don't think Papyrus is gonna be that quote-unquote important. Like, I don't think he's the knight, I don't think he's the Eggman. I think he's gonna be angsty. I think in Undertale, Papyrus wanted to be showy and popular, but now he's gonna reject popularity before it rejects him. I think he's gonna be shy, have a shell, be a shut-in. I think we're getting angsty Papyrus. And then maybe his arc is opening up, and then when Sans and Papyrus go to Undertale, that's why he's so flashy and everything, and Sans got that don't forget picture and all that. I guess there's also the topic of Noelle's mom, who's likely named Carol, and we're probably gonna meet soon. I think she's just a scared mom. I think she's controlling to Noelle because she felt super out of control when one of her daughters went missing across time and space, potentially. But I love my buddy Mauve's ideas, who's asking these questions, seeing these details, like why is Noelle's mom described as so busy when they also say she runs unopposed? Why is she so busy when Undyne says she's so bored because nothing ever happens in town? I respond something boring like, the festival's coming up, maybe that takes a lot of work, and then she's got this other great detail, you know, as mayor, she probably knows something about the bunker, right? I think that's a super cool point, and it gets me thinking, how long has that bunker been there? What's inside? Did they investigate thoroughly? Did Carol fight to lock it up, or to keep it open for the chance that Des might come back? I got no shots to call, I just thought that she sparked cool thoughts worth sharing. On that same point, I guess I had a little connection I almost included in my Ralsei vessel theory, but didn't because it didn't quite feel concrete enough. It's really just, I thought it was cute that in Chapter 1, when naming the teams, if you go with Ralsei's choice, you get this big name that Susie then shortens to the Fun Gang. And in Undertale, the value that dictates a bunch of rare Gaster-related stuff to happen is known as the fun value. Maybe that's nothing, but Cammy Boy G seemed to have a sweet response to it, so I figured I'd share. And I guess I can end it there. I don't really have any other solid shots to call. I haven't for the past couple minutes, but plenty of brainstorming. I am so curious on why there's so much emphasis on, hey, you should really play Undertale first. Are we gonna go there? Are we gonna solve the piano puzzle again and prove we're some otherworldly space and time traveler? I don't know, but I'm recording this line at 10:59 p.m. on June 3rd. I have been out of time. I hope this was enjoyable. I beg for forgiveness for the minimal editing. I wish you all the best, and I'll see you all, not tomorrow, like I'll upload, but don't watch, because we should all play this on our own for a bit, but I'll see y'all on the other side. I am so looking forward to chatting about all this new stuff with all of y'all when we're ready. See y'all then. Deltarune today.